The Los Angeles Dodgers are headed back to the World Series, and you know what that means. It's time to talk about how they're ruining baseball and the fact that we need a salary cap right now. It seems like these conversations are always happening these days. Predictably, the internet does not need to be told twice. I think that we can all agree that not all of the teams, especially the small market teams, are able to participate in the distribution of the game stars. And everyone has their own opinions on why that might be happening. Some say a salary cap, like what they have in the NBA or the NFL, would curb overspending and allow teams with less money to compete a little bit better. Some believe that a salary floor alone could get that job done, as it's the cheapest owners that are keeping their teams uncompetitive. I have thoughts on all of those things, of course, but I'm going to save that for a deep dive on another day because we're going to be talking about CBA and the upcoming negotiations quite a bit in the next year. So today I want to tackle just a single part of this problem: the ever-increasing contract numbers given in free agency that are pricing out the smaller market teams. I'll explain how free agency works, why it is that way, and how I think some simple adjustments could possibly get everyone what they want. I know, it's pretty crazy. So first, what even is free agency? Free agency is the first opportunity for a professional athlete to fully negotiate a contract with any team in the league, theoretically receiving full value for their services. Now, every single sport has their own version of this system, governed by their own rules and built to facilitate the way that that game is played and put together. It takes into account things like how many total players there are on a team, how many players can play at one given time, what value a certain player type or a position has to that game. All of those things are factored into what free agency brings for what guys. The biggest difference between baseball and the other major sports in the United States is the length and potential value of those contracts is uncapped, meaning that a player can be paid whatever a team is willing to give them. That's free market capitalism. Now, that concept is exactly what small market owners say, and many fans believe, is what is allowing for the best talent to be consolidated into the richest teams or the biggest markets, i.e. the Los Angeles Dodgers. So, for the sake of argument and for this video, let's assume that we all accept that that dynamic is a big problem and that we want to fix it. In order to accomplish that goal, we have to establish why baseball has its market set up this way. Reason number one, teams have a lot of control at the beginning of a player's career, more so than any other sport. Therefore, it takes a long time to get to free agency. So there's a lot of reasons that it is so long, but some of the big ones are the fact that the minor leagues exist. I was drafted at 18 years old. In the NBA, you have to go to college for 1 year, and in the NFL, you have to go to college for 3, or you have to be at least a junior before you can go. They use college a little bit to develop players before they're ready to go to the big show. In baseball, guys can go straight out of high school and then they have to develop in the minor leagues. I myself spent over 5 years in the minor leagues, which didn't even take into account how much control is given at the major league level. Minor league contracts, when you sign them, are set at 7 years. If you live out your entire minor league contract and then get to the major leagues, a new contract takes place and it is for another 6 years. 6 years of service time that for a lot of people is actually spread out over 7-8 years. Take me as an example. I was drafted in 2008 as an 18-year-old. I got to my 5th year of my minor league contract and entered something called the Rule 5 system. If I weren't protected on the 40-man roster, meaning I could be called up to the big leagues at any given time, I would be put into something called the Rule 5 draft, which would give other teams the opportunity to pick me up and have to put me in the big leagues for an entire year to keep me in their organization. Or the team you're on can protect you by putting you on the 40-man roster, which increases your pay quite a bit, not to big league levels, but much better than the minor leagues is. And that is the route that I went. I was put on the 40-man roster, and my contract then continued with the team. Then when you actually get to the big leagues, your big league contract kicks in. If you just go up and stay up like Joe Mauer did, he got called up and never went back to the minor leagues or used an option, you have 6 years before you get to free agency. That sounds like a lot of years. It's hard to tell which one of those is overlapping. So let me give you a prime example of a player that's going into free agency this year and how the length of these contracts has affected them. You may have heard of Tyler Rogers. I use him a lot as an example of how free agency works. Tyler is Taylor Rogers' twin brother. Taylor got to the big leagues very quickly with me in Minnesota, and Tyler is a submariner that went to San Francisco. Now, Tyler Rogers was in the minor leagues for all 7 years of his minor league contract. He went into the Rule 5 draft. He was not picked up by another team, so his minor league contract just continued. Remember, he is a submarine pitcher who does not throw very hard against what is normally looked for in right-handed pitchers these days. He played all the way through his 7th minor league season and then was called up to the major leagues after his season had ended. So he had played out the entire minor league contract. If he weren't called up, he would have became a minor league free agent. But because he had been so good in the minors, which he did, he threw like a 2 in AAA for like 4 years before he got the opportunity. They kind of threw him a bone and said, hey, come up and let's see what you got. And you know what he did? He pitched great right away. And then he started his major league contract. That was 6 years ago, and he was traded to the Mets at the deadline this last year and is finally a free agent. He was drafted out of college. He was 21 years old, and now he will be 35 entering his first year of free agency. Now, this is a kind of a rare situation, but it just goes to show you how long a team can be in control of a player if all of the stars align. Tyler Rogers was a member of the San Francisco Giants for 13 years. That's crazy. When free agency could potentially take that long to get to, understandably, a player would like to maximize how much they are paid at that point. That makes sense, right? So that takes us to reason number 2. Because it takes so long, most guys only get one opportunity to make the majority of their career earnings. In those 6 years that you are signed in a major league deal, the pay goes as follows. Year 1, 2, and 3, you get a version of whatever minimum wage is. So the first year's minimum wage, and then you can get nominal increases based on some past equation that is not really easy to understand a lot of times. It's like a normal kind of raise, but you're still in the hundreds of thousands. You don't get over $1 million, especially if you're a relief pitcher like me. Then you enter years 4 to 6 as we build towards free agency. Those are called arbitration years, where you get a limited opportunity to negotiate with the team based on a comparative player that you are similar to and what they got in the past. So you have a range that this salary can be, and basically what you're trying to do is argue that you are either just as good as or better than the guy that you're being compared to, and they're doing the opposite. It's not truly like an open market situation where you can like leverage other teams against. You still are just negotiating with the team you're on, but the potential to make more money than you were making the last 3 years is there, and that is a positive thing. Is that going to be all of the money you make for your career? The hope is no. So then you get to free agency after 6, and that is where the big payday is supposed to be. But remember, if you are like me, it took you 5.5 years to get to the big leagues and then 6 years to get to free agency. It took me 11 years of my career to get to free agency, actually close to 12. I was a free agent at 31 years old, right after the COVID season. Contract offers were much lower, especially for relief pitchers. They generally make less money than everyone else anyways. And I was 31 years old, which is kind of the oldest you want to be going into free agency, frankly. That's where the league kind of considers the back end of your prime to be. And so it limits the number of years you can get from that point. So timing is everything when it comes to free agency and how old you are when you hit it. This is going to be important for part 2 of this video. Really quickly, before I move on, I just want to make it very clear that it's not my intention to flex my net worth or show like how much money I made in my career and look how great I am. I am aware of the growing inaffordability of life. I don't want to make anyone feel bad about that. Because this conversation is going to be happening so much in the next year, I just want to give you the human perspective on how these decisions are made based on the system that is set up and how possibly we can fix some of it. So that is my intention. Please don't hate me. Really quickly, I'm going to break down my career to show you how important free agency is and why players value it so highly. In my first and second year, I made pretty much just minimum wage. In my third year, I got a little bit of a bump, about $100,000, because I had played well the first 2 years. Then I got Tommy John surgery. So then I went into arbitration, having missed an entire year. I had to be compared to another player that also got hurt, and I had to basically just take whatever they offered. So I got basically what I got the year before. I've gotten about $100,000 raise or a 15% raise over 4 years of my career so far, and have made $1.5 million, $2 million bucks. Then in year 5, I had 25 innings the year before, got another bump, Not a huge bump, still haven't made $1 million. And then in my final year, I got compared to someone with a full year after I pitched really well. And then what happened? COVID hit, and I had to get that money prorated anyways. It was $2.205 million that then turned into $880,000. So I technically made less money than I made the year before.
Let's take you through the Arena Club Slab Pack experience. This is part 2 because Todd Father last week pulled a card that he didn't love, yet he sold it back for actually more than what the Slab Pack cost. This time, pulls a card that he likes.
Yeah, and this is the best part of it. Ronnie Mauricio, the Mets standout, rookie sensation. He's been absolutely phenomenal. I like the itch of seeing what you're going to get. I like prospects. I don't love them. But seeing this kind of card is actually absolutely beautiful thing. I know a couple people around town that would absolutely love that card. So there's going to be a lot of conversations going on here for Arena Club.
And what you do is you have it in your digital showroom. If you want to hand it out locally, then cool. You ask Arena Club to send it to you, and they do. Or you can sell it back like you see there. Instant offer for $193, but he's keeping it. And you can do what Todd Father does by going to arenaclub.com/Val and getting 20% off your first card purchase or your first slab pack purchase.
So I've gone 6 years in major leagues and have not made $1 million in a year yet. And you're supposed to have made that much by now, even relievers. So then I went into free agency, and over the next 3 years, 2 with the Mets, where I signed 2 for $15.5 million, and then once with the A's, 1 for 7, I made $22.5 million. In my career, I made just about $27 million, and just under 23 of that was in the final 3 years of 10 seasons. That is why free agency is so important and why we focus on it so hard, because the ability to negotiate any part of your contract is so hard to do in the beginning of your career up to 6 years, and the vast majority of players don't even get there. Now we talk about reason number 3. The peak numbers, meaning the highest contract numbers, are going so high because of this one earning opportunity and the free market system. We are taught as players that free agency is where your ability to recoup your full value, with the assumption that you are giving more than you were receiving in terms of money at the beginning of your career, because you don't have any control over negotiating those things. You're receiving that value on the back end in free agency, even if it's by another team. Does that not make sense? It doesn't really make sense, and that's maybe something that needs to be addressed as well. So with the assumption that you want to get that one big contract, that one big guaranteed contract, and maximize its value, those contracts are then set by the guys that signed similar contracts and increase that number every single time a new guy signs one. For example, Mookie Betts signs his contract. Mike Trout signs his contract of over $400 million. Those 2 guys walked so that Juan Soto, who signed a $765 million contract, can run. This is how those numbers go so high. Guys stack on each other because we are all under this assumption that we're only going to get one crack at it. So what can be done about it? I have a couple thoughts. And remember, this is all hypothetical. I am not advocating for any of these things. It's just something to think about. Suggestion 1, adjust the incentives by shortening control by teams. So with the idea that free agency is your big payday, players are taught, or at least suggested to by agencies, to not take team-friendly extensions with teams and push for big free agency payday instead, because it's seen as the only time you can get your full value. Team-friendly deals, if you take a deal that is considered less than your value will be at free agency by signing with the team that you're on right now, being on a team and only being able to negotiate with them gives them leverage to push those numbers down a little bit. That logically makes sense. I also don't begrudge anybody who wants to sign one of these, because maybe they just like being where they are and they don't really care about the money. Believe it or not, that is a big part of this sometimes. So my question is, how would that dynamic change if the time it took to get to free agency was actually reduced and there were now multiple opportunities to get your value? What if pointing towards one glorious free agency date was no longer the norm because it was closer, and therefore there might be a couple opportunities because you're younger when you hit it and you're younger when that contract ends? Suddenly, players probably won't worry so much about driving that number to the moon, because you're going to have an opportunity to reassess later, and there is some security in that. It's what it comes down to. You just want to get it done, guaranteed, so you don't ever have to worry about it again, one way or the other. That's why guys are afraid of taking too low of a deal as well, because you can't reassess that later either. So building in more opportunities or more ways to be creative might make it so these contracts aren't so big and maybe so long. Let's go through an example really quick. Say the time it takes to get to free agency once you get to the big leagues is reduced to 4 years with like a mutual option for the 5th year, meaning both the player and the team decide they would continue with what they have in place, and then they can negotiate the salary similarly to how arbitration works. Say that player gets to the big leagues at 22 after being drafted at 21. That would set free agency possibly at 26 or 27. Remember, we're going to be talking about how old the guy is throughout this whole timeline, because that matters a lot for length of contract and value, because they project when this player is going to regress. With the mutual option, there are a bunch of ways to recoup value earlier in a career, including more ways to get deals done that don't need to be 13 years long. For example, signing a 5-year extension with your home team when you're 24 is now much more palatable because you'll still be a free agent at 29. Players won't be so afraid to sign something that maybe isn't paying them their full value, because they might have an opportunity to recoup that value later if they were wrong. Also provide some front end security for them as well, so they make a good amount of money or more than they would have otherwise. And if they end up not panning out, then they still have some money to take home. And also, the team didn't have to lock in a 13-year deal in which they are paying 11 years of no value on the back end. They have an out as well. So I feel like this could possibly change a few things. One, players would be more likely to sign with their current team. You get to keep your young guys a little bit longer, possibly into some of their prime, so that the team that drafted them is getting the best version of them without having to sell the farm to keep them that way. Also, this understanding that I'm going to have opportunities to make different amounts of money at different times in my career might allow players to prioritize the other parts of that decision in free agency. How good the team is, the city you live in, how close it is to home, what other perks you can get, because those are part of the decision. It just usually comes down to money being the highest one, because again, it's your only chance. It makes maximizing the contract size feel a little bit less important while still allowing players to realize their true value. Now, reducing the time to free agency is directly beneficial to the players, even though I believe that that change in incentive will make negotiating these contracts a little bit easier on the teams. But let's not be naive. Teams are going to need something big in return as well, some sort of limiting something, because at the end of the day, limiting expenses is what their goal is. Again, not going to go down that path. We're not ranting. We're staying on task. The owners give up some control. So what would they receive in exchange? Possibly a limiting contract length. That is something that happens in a cap system, and there's taboo around even mentioning anything that is related to a cap system. But if say it was limited to like 5 years or 6 years, this would, one, guarantee the player has an opportunity to hit free agency again within a window where they still are probably considered in their prime, if you're lucky. And it would also naturally reduce the full value of a contract so more teams can afford them. In essence, it would limit the massive sizes of these contracts, but its year-to-year value could still hold steady, the AAV. Now, would the owners go for a version of this? Sure, if the concerns they have are truly related to their ability to afford these best players and therefore compete. But unfortunately, it's likely more about wanting stronger controls on expenses and the built-in excuses to pay less. Like, lowering expenses is, after all, the tried and true best way to increase your profits, what they're all in this for anyways. So this is all based on good faith negotiation, where the problem we're trying to solve is established. That has not worked very well in recent years. So that remains to be seen if that would happen. I believe that this is an interesting way to approach the incentives of both sides. What do we want, and what does the system incentivize us to do? So with the end of the 2025 season upon us, the CBA negotiations that will ramp up at the end of next season are going to be a major talking point for the next 12 to 18 months. We're going to have plenty of time to get into all the other pieces of the puzzle, and trust me, I intend to. Can Major League Baseball begin to solve some of the issues around competitive balance through simply adjusting some of its incentives around free agency? Let me know down in the comments and keep the conversation going with any questions or suggestions that you also have. Also, like, subscribe, and turn on the notifications so you don't miss these videos in the future. Anyways, I am starving, so I am going to get out of here. Drink your water, watch your baseball, and I'll see you next time on the Trevor May Baseball Channel. Double.